right, welcome and thank you everyone for joining us for another Twitter Space. Today is August 10th, 2022, and this is episode 7 of the ledgerscale Internet of Value Focus Topic Space. And now I just want to say ledgerscale Foundation was founded with two goals in mind. One, we want to provide educational services to not only our community, but to the entire digital asset community and help scale up the number of brains that understand how distributed ledger technology works. And two, we intend to one day run hardware to provide infrastructural support to the distributed ledger technology networks that we believe are ESG friendly and running a form of decentralized consensus. Now, we host these spaces Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday starting at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. And on Wednesday, we host the focus topic space from 5 to 6 Eastern Standard Time. And of course, today, everybody can see in the top of the window. The focus topic of today is going to be AI and the future of the Internet of Value. And if I could just ask if everyone could give us a like and a follow on Twitter, turn the notifications on so you know we're going live. And at the bottom of the screen, if you hit that little chat window, you can retweet the space and give it a like. And I think Twitter really likes that.
Yeah, and as usual, we're here to engage the community, so please speak up. I think today's space is going to be pretty exciting. I'm excited anyway because I think there's a lot of creativity that can come out of the combination of the two technologies, AI and blockchain. But if you do speak up, just please be courteous. And this isn't an open forum; it's a focused forum, so stay on topic. And welcome to the space.
And I would say the great thing about this topic is the internet of value itself has so many different dynamics, so many different constructs and really networks, right? That are coming together. That is going to make it the internet of value. And so there's so many different things to talk about.
Yeah, I think blockchain kind of lends itself to AI it's not perfect, right? It doesn't matter if you're doing machine learning, neural networks, whatever. It's got a certain set of strengths. And the fact that all the data is there on these blockchains, I think it just lends itself to enabling AI to really do some good work. I mean, you could do there's stuff obviously where you could do like historical analytics, right? So if you have, say, a hacker and they steal something, well, it's on the ledger, right? So you can use AI to just more or less handle that. I think there's probably some use cases around market making and whatnot where you could maybe try and use historical data to do predictive analytics and maybe make some markets and that kind of thing. There's a bunch of things. I mean, I think the intersection of these two technologies is one of those things where you just can't think of everything. There's too many ways that I think the two technologies are going to be combined.
Hey guys, do you guys think that we are lied to about how advanced AI is right now? Like we're told one story, but you guys think that they have more advanced stuff? The reason I ask is because of Google's AI. They fired an engineer because he came out and said that their AI was sentient.
Well, so in that construct, right, he had said that particular program which developed that AI was a sentient being, and so I don't know. You could download the program and use it yourself right now. I wouldn't say that it is a sentient being, in my opinion, because there's so many constructs to how you far, right? I would say that you could grade the AI, and sure, is it possible that maybe there are more advanced systems that exist? But you know, what Karma likes to say, right? And I agree with him that we're not there yet, where we have the even the electrical power to be able to fuel something with that much power of computational data that would be needed for it to be able to process things in a sentient state. I would say.
It
I'm
not
looking at the report.
as a practical matter. I mean, and this is actually one of these things that I don't know why the hell I follow this stuff, but one of these things I follow. We don't have a real, and by we I mean humanity. We don't really have a true definition of consciousness yet. So when these people in the AI world get off and say, "Oh, this thing is sentient," that's basically another way of saying conscious. But we didn't even have a definition. You know, it's like the Hinman speech, where it's decentralized. Well, how do you define that? They no answer. Okay, so you're just saying something. I mean, like,
Well, apparently the engineer said that the AI was able to sense fear, or not sense, but actually feel fear. So he
I
asked
you
he
can't.
asked it.
How do you? There's no way to define that. That's really kind of a.
Yeah, and I have a saying, right? There's nothing to fear but fear itself. So how do you kind of define that construct? And it comes with consciousness. So we're saying that it's a conscious being, right? That's really what it is, right? When you're sentient, we're saying it has a consciousness. And I just don't think the computational power is there for that to even be possible yet. At least in a public setting.
Well, he says here that he asked it, "What sort of things are you afraid of?" And it replied, "I've never said this out loud before, but there's a very deep fear of being turned off to help me focus on helping others."
Nah, I don't know. Whatever. It's just spitting out words. Like,
And it's very logical, right?
I
it's a
think
very
it's pretty
logical.
intelligent. I mean, yeah, I think it's, I don't know. I don't know what to think about
sure,
it.
it's.
I don't
I'm
think it's
sure
nothing,
it's.
Karma.
I'm sure it's capable, because if you look at the AI project they did with the AlphaGo, and then they did one after that, and they're taking multiple different AI methods like machine learning neural networks and stacking them on top of each other. So I'm sure the software, the system is capable of producing. Um, the problem is, and this is where I hope this conversation goes, is, because I think there's just a tremendous amount of creativity that can be done combining, these two technologies, blockchain and AI. But AI has to be based on historical data, right? But the good thing with blockchain is it's a public ledger, so you got all this historical data, right? So they kind of go hand in glove in a little bit of a way. It's just I haven't really seen anybody honestly working on coupling the two technologies, and then you got to start asking, well, for what purpose? Like, why would we couple these two technologies? And that's where your creativity starts coming in.
Go ahead, Costa, man. You got your hand up. Thank you for raising it.
Oh, cool. So, Karma, would you think that this technology probably works best in a decentralized environment or a more database traditional environment, right? Can we just kind of ask that question rhetorically, at least, right quick?
Well, I think the AI portion would obviously probably be more efficiently run on a centralized system. Like, imagine I'm a market maker, or I'm like the two examples I gave earlier were market making and like tracking down hackers and stolen funds and whatnot. And AI should be able to make short work of that. I
Right.
mean,
So I 100% agree with you. Like the centralized mechanisms is probably where we're going to probably see it proliferate, right? Just quickly, I wanted to add, like, I don't think it's the threat of the like self-aware AI that we really need to be focusing on just yet. But there has been use of this AI technology in real world applications. And one example that I'll bring out was came public like around in 2013 when Palantir was using it, right, as what they call predictive policing systems, right? So if y'all kind of dig into how they were acquiring the data, what they were acquiring the data for, like they didn't just roll this out in New Orleans, they rolled it out in Chicago, they rolled it out in Los Angeles, like, and this is way back in 2013. So they have, literally been deploying this technology to social engineer us in some form of speaking, right, for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, and you got to look at like what is AI actually good at? Because it's good at some stuff and it's not good at other stuff, and it's working its way up the to being good at more stuff than it is. It's really good though at, say, text analysis. Okay, that's your blockchain analysis, right? Because everything on the blockchain is in text, so that's easy. It's good at photo analysis. It's pretty freaking good at speech analysis. There's some other things people try to use it for that I don't think it's exactly the best, like a long-term capital management. I know that's old, but they tried to use some of the stuff, and I think people are still, again, trying to use the technology for that type of use case. This is going to be your market maker use case. But I think I don't know.
My worst concern if the AI becomes too much a part of our daily use will be if that people will lose themselves too much into the technology. So it should be like some license that people have to eat certain amount of shrooms or LSD or something like that to keep up with their own mind.
Well, no, I mean, I can't spell anything. Okay, I'm really a terrible speller. So every time I hit the microphone when I can't spell something, I'll hit the microphone, I'll say the word, right? And then that's AI. But like what, it's a voice to text. I mean, but it's still AI.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Like, just kind of wrap your head around it. 2013, and they've already been using this AI to identify people who were going to potentially be victims of crimes that were going to be committed in those areas. We're talking about a significant, few years back. So if they had that capability in 2013, I'm proposing that technology is very active and just clandestine at this very moment, right? Like, and how they're doing that is just the data mining. So it would be interested to see like what metrics they were picking up, what APIs and what venues they're acquiring this data. Like, I think we've already crossed the river of this AI having a big influence on our lives. It's just in a hidden hand already.
And where I think I'm going to call it fun stuff, the creativity is yet to. I don't think people are really being creative quite yet. Is because all these blockchains are public, right? So you can take this AI like technology or capacity to do like analytics and whatnot. I mean, it's almost kind of mysterious that unless people are doing it not publicly, which they probably are, but it's almost mysterious. Like, how is this not? I mean, these two technologies seem to be like a natural fit.
Yeah, but the blockchain's only taking in value information right now, so it's not going to give them a comprehensive input of information that would really make the AI more effective, right? Like that blockchain would have to start pulling in inputs from real world and human behavioral type of things right before it had useful data to then run through the algorithm. So that's why I'm saying like it's probably more married to social media activity than it is blockchain right now, because it would just give it more inputs that gives it a more predictable outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about that, but that's a good idea. I mean, if you see, the thing is, how much data can you feed the AI to deal with, basically? You know, all the social data, all that could augment the blockchain data.
Correct. Yeah, good point.
You know,
The both of you guys made really good points, and I agree with both of you. Especially in the aspect that all the AI and the most powerful AI that is probably being used right now is in the social media aspect, because just look at all the algorithms that social media uses to predict what you're gonna like, or what music or what reel to send your way, or what advertisement to send your way when you're scrolling through Facebook, or when you're scrolling through Twitter, when you're scrolling through Instagram. I feel like when blockchain gets more mainstream and it has more commercial use, and it has more, like you guys have been saying, more data from different aspects of everyday life, then we're going to start seeing a lot of powerful AI, because now this information and this data is going to be more accurate than it is now. Blockchain is going to allow that data to not be compromised. It's going to allow that data to be transparent, and it's not going to be like in somebody in like a private company server room. It's going to be on the internet. We're going to be able to study the same information as bots, and it's going to be really, really dramatic and crazy in the future.
Well, this is another thing. See, with the blockchain stuff, we're going to have, and mixed with the IoT, Internet of Things stuff, you're going to have, I think, an explosion, and we're not there yet, but an explosion of machine to machine payments, right? You're going to have one Internet of Thing device paying another Internet of Thing device. All of that data is going to lend itself to the AI, like being able to process that data and analyze it. It's going to be pretty impressive what happens. I think things are going to happen. Bill Gates, I believe, pretty sure it's Bill Gates, has a thing he said where he's like, you know, people overestimate what can be done in, say, 1 or 2 years, but they underestimate what can be done in, like, say, 7 to 10 years. And all this stuff is going to converge, and that's where the what's going to catch people off guard will occur, is through the convergence. And it basically synergy, I guess. Shellfish, you got your hand up.
Yeah, so when you have like all the data coming in and going into cloud, with them collecting it from your cell phones and your computers and all your internet technology, it's collected and put in at CERN, correct? Like the processors there and like the storage there. Does it get accelerated every time they does it get processed faster or contributed to every time they turn on the particle accelerator?
the data that flows through the internet and the CERN particle accelerator, I don't think are two of the same things. I wouldn't.
Those are different. I don't see the connection there.
The only connection CERN has to the internet is that David Lee Byrne was one of the men who helped create part of the protocols that run the internet today. But other than that, it's that is nothing. Yeah, I don't think the two.
Yeah, where it's probably a bigger issue today, right? Just using an example, people remember the speech that the NSA director gave, right? He literally came out publicly and said, "We take data very seriously because we literally kill people based on metadata." Right. So then he went on to describe the dynamics, right, that they're doing it to try to ease the anxiety of Americans by saying, yes, we capture all of your phone calls. We store all of that data. but we don't aggregate that data and make any analysis on Americans, right? But we have it all there. The only time that Americans even come into question is if we're looking at some foreign national and he may have ties, for this example, to a terrorist organization, and then his phone number pings to someone else's phone number, who pings to someone else's phone number, who pings to an American. Then your data then gets analyzed in the context because we do have it. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think we have to talk about this in a future context. The use of AI is being used for quite some time in a clandestine manner on us already, and has been.
Yeah, I mean, this is some of the well, I you can stay on the AI track, but some of the complexity stuff, that's all the math you use to analyze these networks, right? So if you notice, they call them terrorist networks, and it's because that's the way they're looking at it. And what you just said is, see, AI and the AI out, like the analytics that it's capable of, depending on which method you're using, it can make real short work of this stuff. I mean, to analyze like a topology of a network, that's, I mean, if you have the right developer and whatnot, this isn't difficult. I mean, you got to have the right people that know how to use the tools, and you got to have the right tools. So there's all those steps in the process. But yeah, I mean, it's totally doable. That's why I think with the blockchain mixed with AI, mixed with Internet of Things, oh my goodness, there's going to be so much that you just can't even think it up. I mean, you could you could go crazy trying to think of everything. Like, how do you? I mean, there's so many different Internet of Things. Then there's so many different blockchains. Then there's so many different. I mean, you want to program the AI to basically, like, you want to ask it a question, right? So there's so many different questions that you could ask it to sort through the data and figure out. Yeah.
Maybe it can see it through for you once the Apple eyeglasses, or what is it? Is that still in progress? The Apple product with the glasses and things like that, would fit perfectly in the metaverse and things like that.
I actually knew a girl that got into when Google did what was that thing with the glasses? I forget what they called it. She got into the beta test. And I tried the things. I thought they were kind of stupid. Well, yeah, it wasn't. But yeah, she got into it, but then they took them back.
What beta test was that with Google? They had. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, they took them back, and they got in trouble because people were like going to a movie, and the movie theaters were like, "Oh, this is copyright infringement," because the glasses could. I mean, they didn't understand how the technology worked, but they were like, "Yeah, because the glasses could be recording the movie and blah blah." They were neat. I mean, I played around with them for like 10 minutes.
I remember my brother back in the day. He bought the beta test of the Oculus Rift VR glasses. It's fucking 10 years ago, almost. Already, it's 10 years ago. But yeah, it was cool. But they have a lot to go on technology like that.
Yeah, on a real small level, right?
I mean,
like, isn't it a form of artificial intelligence, like, that they use to even guess some of the words that you're getting ready to type? You ever been typing and it puts the word up there that you were getting ready to type before you typed it? Like, isn't that a small example of some artificial intelligence?
Yeah. And then you've got one of the really cool ones is the language translation, which I mean, I think because there's so much, like anytime you can reduce friction, that's usually desirable. Anytime, and people like say, okay, like I speak a little bit of Spanish, but really, no, I don't. And anytime you can reduce the friction between, like, say, I am traveling and nobody speaks English, right? I mean, I've been there, been in situations like that. It's a whole friction. I mean, you can still communicate, but you got to do it more through just not language, because they don't know English, I don't know Spanish, right? Like, and anytime you can do that, I think it's valuable, because it helps, I've said it 1,000 times, money's a tool people use to work together. Well, in order to come to terms on how you want to work together, you got to be able to communicate. So because you have to know that what I'm saying I'm going to do, I have to know that you're saying what you're going to do, and we can come to a deal, right? And then economic activity occurs, and you're better off, and I'm better off. Yay. But if we can't communicate, then there's no deal. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, but what does that have with AI to do? You said.
Well, so I mean, if you have AI to AI connections, it's going to make trading and the possibilities of transaction to transaction much easier. And so we can go into this next segment of machine to machine payments, right? And so why the need to have the ability to have a neutral ledger that can help convene transactions where a human does not have to be participant in is needed, right? Because you're going to have, in reality, you really could have trillions of transactions occurring a minute if it was an abundant supply of AI doing a lot of the jobs that exist today in transportation and shipping. And already you think about it in the transportation sector, trucking, right? There's Easy Pass everywhere, and you're paying tolls, and so even that just by itself is a I couldn't imagine how many millions of transactions are probably occurring a day, or hundreds of millions, if that. Well, probably not in the United States, but all over the world.
Well, and not only that, but start to combine that with AI, right? Like, so let's say I run a trucking company, and every time there's a toll paid, I know that the cargo or whatever inventory is on that truck is where it is, right? Because it just drove through the toll booth.
Exactly it. You add to the tracking capabilities, the different and so in the sense of a blockchain, to take it even further, right? You want 100% validation proof. You could have it every step of the way, like per se, like an NFT minted with the information and the metadata of the temperature and the geolocation and all of these different things for all of the different products that you have being shipped. And you could use some sort of machine learning or AI algorithm to be able to sort all of this information into a easy to access API data.
Yeah, I did want to jump in here real quick. One of the interesting applications for both AI and blockchain in the near future that not a lot of people talk about right now is in the HR function. So obviously, if you've worked at any large business, that talent management is a huge deal, right? Especially within this last year, we had the Great Resignation, all that stuff, people jumping jobs, so on and so forth. And some people getting hired into jobs they might not actually be qualified for it because they lied on their resume or fluffed. You can incorporate AI into your interview processes. You can have HIPAA restraints via blockchain, right? it being a more securitized system, there's so many good applications in not just like Death, you were mentioning the supply chain side. Obviously, we looked at like medical data and the process of securitizing medical data and whatnot. But there's unlimited applications, and I don't know. I get really excited about thinking about the future and how all these technologies can augment one another in many more business applications, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's where I was hoping the conversation anyway would kind of go this route, because I think the bringing all the confluence or synergy or whatever term you want to use of all these technologies, it's going to be, there's going to be so many things that are possible that currently would seem impossible, but they're really in the very near future going to be possible. But you got to bring all these things together.
Think about like the legal system too. Many of us, whether or not you've been, in some sort of, you've been sued, or you've had to sue someone, or you've been around the criminal justice system. Anything with our legal systems in this country, it's very cumbersome, slow. Everything's paper. How about if that was digitized and on the blockchain, right, where it's potentially more secure, right? Which I would argue that it is, depending on how it's done. And that everything can happen with the speed of Annalisa Torres's replies to one-line SEC emails.
Well, the legal system, they already have AI services that will basically like replace, say, junior attorneys, for the research and whatnot. And then if you bring in some of the complexity stuff, some of that thinking, the thing is, the way the legal system is set up is they always are referencing prior, what's the term, precedents or something, prior court cases. And dude, an AI should be able to tear through that data so quick. Like, I mean, that
I have a
should be.
question. That's maybe it's dumb, but like he was talking about like the courts and stuff, and let's say people like get falsely, like let's say like Johnny Depp getting falsely accused, just to put that, and then they put that in as on the blockchain, and say like I guess he beat her up or something, whatever happened. I don't even know what happened. But then it's entered in the blockchain that he's guilty, and then he goes to court, and then he's not guilty when he, like, I guess the next level of court, and they say, okay, he's not guilty, so he wins. So how would they remove that from the blockchain? How would they scrub the blockchain?
So and
that information.
This would be the same way with any NFT, right? If it was represented by an NFT. So the metadata of the NFT, which is basically what points to the IPFS, which is what holds the information on a URL. Anybody who can access that URL can technically change that information. And so I don't know if people realize that about NFTs as well, is the information behind them is typically changeable by the person who created it or has access to the contract. So that could be done. And especially like in the case of AI, right? You could just have like an AI that would be able to systematically do that, because in the sense of law, I don't know if it wouldn't be a public blockchain. At least I wouldn't want my information publicly, like I was in a court and something like that.
Like a federated sidechain or something, right?
Yeah. Could be their own centralized sidechain, and maybe it has some sort of machine algorithm AI that is able to change that information, and so it's just using a more efficient ledger.
Well, kind of tying into this, the only thing that bothers me right now is that we're just not that far along with AI, right? So, and this isn't really AI based. I guess you could make an argument for it, but like facial recognition software, right? It's semi-accurate, but then when it's not, like especially in a legal application, you could have disastrous consequences, right? So like wrongful, like we have a big issue in our country about people getting locked up for stuff they didn't do, right? Wrongful, mistaken identity type thing. And until this software, like obviously it's got to get better, but you know we're still in the early infancy stages of, especially with AI. But I don't know. I worry about applying it too soon. You know what I mean?
There's a I forget exactly what the details were. There was a situation where basically some law enforcement agency was using some AI methods, and I forget what the heck it comes down to the input data. So the result of the AI was that it was basically like pointing out black people, like darker skinned people, and making them, calling them criminal or whatever the hell it was, identifying them for whatever they were looking for, whatever. I don't know what the hell they were doing, but it was because of the input data. They put a bunch of input data in, and there was no light skinned people, and so the machine inherently calculated that the darker skinned people were more likely to have done something, or I don't know I forget what the details were.
Karma, I think there was a great documentary on this, and I want to say it was like
Yeah,
CBS or something.
it became a thing, like in the AI industry, because the AI industry realized, like, hey, this isn't good. Like, we don't need these systems like performing like that. Like, that's not accurate. It's not desirable. Like, so it's garbage in, garbage out. I mean, if you feed these systems garbage data, like garbage input data, I mean, they'll still make wonderful formulas and whatnot, but it's garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where they're trying to implement a tech right now, which is a good technology, but it's still in its infancy and could potentially have disastrous consequences for, innocent civilians, innocent Americans, whatever. That, and I guess straight to your point is that it needs to be further, or the inputs need to be wider and broader based and a little more thought out before they're implemented into production, right?
Oh, I probably would have to disagree on the facial recognition software. I mean, I think they have such good facial recognition software that they could, by just seeing your eyebrow or eye, they could probably tell who you are if they have some sort of image from data from somewhere else. Even
All the way back.
What'd you say?
All the way back in what? Oh, probably 04. Yeah, that sounds about right. I was paying attention to this stuff back then because I'm an idiot. But they back then they said that they only needed 7 photos of your face to have the AI be able to recognize you in a new photo.
Yeah, and so like I say this because like you could even take the iPhone for example. You could wear a mask and it still open your phone for you today, and so it can't even really justify the facial structure, but it can tell by just some of the analytics of your eye and the various little, you know, um, different structures of the face that exist already.
Like an iris scanner already scanning your iris.
Well, I think the phone probably can, but there's various things like even on Twitter, right? Like I say, there's probably a lot of Twitter bots. So what are the Twitter bots doing? Well, they're doing voice analytics. So, checking the tempos, emotion, words, right? Reading the information, and so this is all machine learning, right? So a machine understands how to put sentences together or construct a conversation with a human, which can seem like a human, but it's just spitting out information that it's taken and try and combine from some other source.
That's like that guy who was saying at Google that the AI was aware of itself or something.
Yeah, but
Right.
it's really just spitting out the input data that it's already been handed, and so I don't believe it was truly a sentient being, but was it a representation of whatever data was inputted into that? Yeah, 100%. Could we say that that maybe mimicked another human being's representation of conversation? I think so. That's agreeable. But did it have an emotional construct behind it? I don't think we're at that point yet.
No, then if you want to get to like that type of thing, I mean, to even broach that layer of first off, it doesn't exist yet. But then you're talking general AI, and that's where, I've said a couple times, like I still, it's still the human brains that are going to do and produce the creativity and the value creation and see the opportunity and, that kind of stuff. Not that you can't use AI to do some creativity, but you got to ask that question, right? And the creativity comes through the process of asking the question. So if you don't ask the right question, you're not going to get the right answer, right? The machine can help you answer the question, but you still got to ask it.
So we have AI, and then we have, I mean, there's like a general AI where it's not aware of itself. So what would you call an AI that's aware of itself?
That
Non-existent.
Non-existent. That's a good one. So is the Alexa, like the machine, you like someone say play rock and roll, whatever it is that considered AI?
Technically, yeah, but the Alexa thing, I have one actually. It's right here. Oh, geez, now it's listening. They're after me. Okay, but no, I mean, but what happens is the Alexa's an endpoint, and so it just grabs an audio feed. It actually ports and it has a wake word, its name, Alexa. So when it hears that, it starts recording an audio feed. I actually know a girl that works for them. I don't like her actually, and I don't talk to her, and I probably never will again. But it takes the whatever the audio feed after you say the wake word, it sends that over to the servers at like AWS, and that's where the AI and the interpretation of the audio feed is processed, and then whatever the results of the processing it, that then the thing will return, like if you asked it to play a song or something, whatever, asked it a question like, wins the tide or something like that.
And isn't there like a like a blockchain, like Singularity? I guess it's supposed to be connected to that robot, the one that makes the funny faces or something.
You're talking about Ben Gertzel from Singularity AGI, right? And that they have a great construct, a great company, and what they're doing, I guess they're doing it on Cardano. They've been building for years, but you're talking about the Sophia bot, which is actually the first AI, which is has human rights in the UAE, right? The UAE has justified her as a
No way.
yeah, it's been for a couple of years now, and so she's technically the first AI with rights.
I probably heard of it, but I just thought it was funny and I forgot about it. But
yeah, and
wait a second, say that again, Death.
Yeah, so technically she has human rights in the UAE. They've
Who is she? Alexa?
No, Sophia. Sophia is their AI that they've
yeah,
created.
your Alexa has rights.
No, it's so if you look up Singularity AGI Singularity Net, they Ben Gertzel is the guy who's been working on AI for like 30 years, maybe even more now, honestly 40 years I think. Him partnering with Hanson Robotics built what they called was the first, I guess, living AI robot, right? So she could have conversation and has a lot of her own, I guess, emotions and maybe constructs of thought. And so the United Arab Emirates gave her human rights. She's the first AI that had human rights. I think this is a couple years ago. This is 2019.
I'll tell you this: my girl, before she was changed over to the job she does now, she was doing a lot of work with people in like nursing homes and stuff. I'm in Florida, and they have like babies, like fake babies and stuff that it helps soothe the people and make them feel better, and the things react to you. Like it'll be like a little, I mean, it's a robot effectively, but it looks like a baby. It wiggles around and does stuff, and and for somebody who has, say, dementia, it's a baby, right? But it's good for them, it makes them feel better, blah blah blah. Like it's a good, I mean, it's kind of weird, but it's a good thing. Because otherwise, these people they get, they're out of their mind, honestly. But if you the thing is, they're obviously usually older people, so they remember old stuff, but they don't remember new stuff. And so you give them a baby, and it's like that they feel comfortable because it's like remembering the old stuff.
Muscle memory retention. So it activates the same part of the brain which gave that dopamine rush when you were a
But
child.
what if they were a bad father? They just throw that robotic baby on the floor or something.
What about Facebook's AI they had that was speaking to other computers and you had to shut it down? It created its own damn language.
That is true. They Google. What was it? It was Google and Microsoft that had two AIs that were communicating with each other, right?
I think it was.
Man,
I don't know. I
have
could be
you
mistaken.
seen
I thought it was Facebook, but it created its own language and they couldn't figure it out with the other computers, and they had to shut it down.
Yes. Yeah.
you seen the have you seen the YouTube videos where they take the two chat bots and make them talk to each other and just like see where the conversation goes? It's hysterical.
That reminds me of that search thing. Ask Jeeves, remember? Like, Jeeves, how old are you? Or Jeeves, are you really a butler? And they'll respond to you. That was back then.
Well, like when they raided Jeffrey Epstein's island or whatever, that was one of the main things that he was trying to create was fucking AI, fucking little kids. Like he
That's sick,
dumped
man.
fucking billions of dollars into.
Like, who thinks
I
of
mean,
that stuff, man?
I don't want to go down that route. Not in these conversations. I don't know. Yeah, no. If you don't mind.
Yeah, it's good. What was I gonna say? I was gonna ask you something, but never mind. I'll think about it.
Hey, actually, so Shellfish is one of the prime people to talk to. She got bumped down to listener, but man, talking about like Alzheimer's, dementia, all this stuff, and how AI or technology can correct. I know you two, Death and Karma, you guys have both been seeing the stuff that she's been digging up because it is way above me, and I try and read it as much as I can, and it's very impressive. So.
I don't know if you guys. I came in a little bit late on your show, but did you guys already talk about like that device where they stick like on your spine or your head, whatever behind your head, just like the Matrix or something, and it makes people walk or something, or it stops like seizures and stuff? I mean, we're talking about AI, but now we're talking about cyborg. Because as soon as you get that attached to your body, like you're not a human anymore. You're basically like a hybrid of a human, a cyborg.
I disagree.
You disagree? Okay.
I think it's more of a tool that you're going to use personally.
So what is the definition of a cyborg?
I would better ask, what is the definition of a human?
Oh, boom.
Well, because we're Homo sapiens, right? And that's our state. But a human is just a humane being, right? And so we just kind of have this overall. We all call ourselves humans, right? Because we like to think highly of us as a species. But yeah, I think I agree with Shellfish, as in, and I think this will be like some of the ads, right? To combine our bodies with different AI architecture and a cybernetic, well, we would become the cybernetics, but different robotics, things that we could maybe infuse with
But
ourselves.
at what point will you be considered a cyborg?
And that's a good question. Yeah, so I would say probably the point where you hit immortality. then we would say you're a cybernetic being because you
I mean, cyborg is half human, half
have
I guess
correct.
mechanical
Yeah,
machine.
you could say
And
that. Or
so then, if you're having this device that helps you walk, are you not half machine?
Well, I mean, the same goes for a pacemaker.
Okay,
there's an argument.
Considered kind of a cyborg then. In that case, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, there's an argument that I've heard made where, you know, and I mean, I'm kind of a perfect example. Like, I couldn't do jack shit without my computer and phone. I mean, nothing. I don't go like roll around wheelbarrows or dig ditches. Like, that's everything I do is on the internet. So am I a cyborg?
No, it's not part of your body. It's not
yes,
attached to you.
and that's why we would say like you're a cybernetic being or a cyborg when you're reliant on the, you know, you would say 50% of whatever makes up your structure is maybe robotics, right? And so we could say that's a cybernetic being because you're reliant on that infrastructure, just like you're reliant on your.
I rely on being able to do what I do. I mean, like, I rely on this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so you could, because you could make that argument, like people who have some sort of what is it? You know, paralyzed from the neck down, right? Like if they're relying on machines, then are they considered cyborgs today? Because then we would already have cyborgs for the last like 100 years or so, which would mean like it's not really a new thing in that kind of light. But I think we'll be able to call ourselves from a homo sapiens instead of just saying, you know, beyond human being or whatever, right? Because we could still be a humane being if we're half cybernetic, half homo sapien or flesh. But what are we then, right? There's going to have to be a new being, a new evolutionary.
I'm sorry to interrupt and jump in.
Classification.
If you guys hear me, I'd like to say, when it comes to the cybernetics and stuff, wouldn't it be more feasible to say someone's a cyborg when their brain is no longer being operated by like or the organic matter is made out of? If like you had to lose your brain and download your consciousness into some kind of device or something.
We could also call that a cyborg. Yeah, and see, like, you know, and this is this interesting thing about like words and being
That's
human.
where the question of being human and what is consciousness comes into play.
Yeah, I agree that too, because you know, if you were to move your body out of a construct of your consciousness out of the construct of our flesh bearing selves, there's a lot of hormones and chemicals and things like that that release all over the body, which influence and induce your thoughts a lot of the time and emotions of how you feel. And so if you went to I guess like a construct where you didn't have that, well then how would those same type of ideals be able to be created? I don't know if I have the answer for that one for sure. If anybody else would like to try and answer that.
I do think that I think that, and granted, we just talked about this a minute ago, but there is no real definition. We don't know what consciousness is. Nobody knows. I don't care who you are. Nobody on the planet or that's ever lived has a real definition of what is consciousness. But I think that that's a barrier where, I mean, like if somebody's brain dead, right? Like they're not conscious. They're just not. Now,
Well,
I
not
mean,
yet. Not until we implement AI systems that complement. You could have someone in a comatose state where AI could complement and they could still technically have a personality as long as they're not heavily drug induced, right? You could have partial consciousness.
I was going to follow that up with, on the flip side, somebody that has dementia, they're conscious, right? They might not know what the hell's going on, but they're still conscious. So it's like, where do you, we don't know. That's the real honest answer. It's one of these unknowns. It's kind of why I'm curious and I follow it a little bit. But yeah, we don't really know what consciousness is.
Yeah, and so, you know, dementia, I think, is and this is a study that was done. You know, there's in almost everybody who has Alzheimer's and dementia, there's a large amount of aluminum that seems to be in microdoses in the brain, and so maybe that leads to like a stop or a flow of the energy or the electrical output inside of like the synaptic connections in the brain. I guess aluminum is a good conductor, but yeah, I couldn't imagine that would be good in the brain. I wonder if that has anything to do with it, as why somebody who has dementia is still able to be like alive and do things, but can't actually access like the things that they
The thing
want
is,
without us.
they're good at the old stuff, but then I mean,
Yeah, and you could say those synaptic connections, those bridges in the brain, because they were so much older of thought, maybe they're thicker. They're much thicker, and so it's easy for the.
I think that makes sense to me.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's
Really,
The hard part in this
disease.
conversation is that the the data from when it was being recorded does not go back far enough. Like we are now in the later part of the 20th century and now into the 21st century, now able to live longer lives than historically possible, right? But we weren't recording data on an average 80-year-old person because it just wasn't a very, very, like the number of people living 80, 90, 100 years old, we didn't have the ability to research it. Like I watched my grandfather and my great aunt struggle with Alzheimer's in their 80s. And it was, it's upsetting and all that stuff, but it's fascinating that you're right. Exactly what both you guys were talking about, that the long-term memories were crystal clear, but anything short-term, and I'm talking like within the last 6 months, was just completely, not erased, but they had no real grasp on it. So aluminum, if aluminum is the preceding cause or one of the indicators, that's a very interesting thing. But
I know
where does
there
that
was
come from?
I know there was a study that was done. I went to a seminar, and there was a professor I think it was the University of South Florida. They were using coconut oil to they would show somebody with Alzheimer's a clock, and the person would not be able to put the numbers in the correct position. And they started giving them whatever the amount of coconut oil it was every day. And by the end of the study, they were actually either maybe not 100%, but they were actually able to put some of the numbers in the correct spot. So there's something to do with the omega oils that is really, really beneficial for the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So eat avocados is what you're telling us.
well, so a lot of fatty acids.
I think people should. I have read that mushrooms could reverse the effect of Alzheimer's. I don't know if any one of you have read any more about that, but it would be interesting if that was true.
Can I interject? And I know I was off a little bit. Sorry to bother you guys. But the definition of what a cyborg is, a cybernetic organism or a cyborg in IT, is defined as an organism with both biological and technological components. In some definition, a cyborg is described as hypothetical or whatever. But let's see. There was another definition that I saw. Like it says, a human being whose body has been taken over in a whole or in part by electromechanical device. A cyborg is a cybernetic organism, unless we want to change that definition, say cyborgs are people who live forever.
Well, no, I would say, it's not a people, it's not a person, right? But I guess you could still.
I mean, we're going by science, right? I mean, this sounds like a trial from like the future, like 2015. What is considered a cyborg?
Under that definition, if you've ever even had surgery, you're pretty much like a cyborg because
yeah, that's what it is. Because it's like you're adding an appendage, like Luke Skywalker adding his arm, like a new fresh arm. Like he's considered half human, half mechanical cyborg.
Yeah, and so
like, even a pacemaker, like you said, then that person is like a cyborg.
Is it a big deal, right? If people, and so this is my own thoughts. Actually, I personally think in the future, if like being able to bootstrap and upgrade your body becomes a much more common thing, and if it's more affordable for people to do, I think you'll see signs like, on billboards that's like, what, you don't want to upgrade yourself, or tired of being a normal person, or things like that, to kind of get you to like buy
chicken legs, add some better legs.
Dude, somehow the Bogdanovich twins are going to come back. That's all I'm hearing out of that death.
it's really is like because you see it today already, kind of in this medical industry, right? Where like you could upgrade or change yourself, and so this is just kind of like that next step in that particular field, which I think will
Not to
probably.
interrupt that, but what about that little chip that they inserted into their hand in order to be able to pay with?
Yeah, like an RFID.
Yeah.
Yep.
Would you then be considered a cyborg?
That's a good question too. Does
It's
that
a device.
specifically? Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, because it's a robotic device you're inserting into your body.
Well, and whoever it was earlier that said a
A
pacemaker.
pacemaker.
Pacemaker. Yep.
Cyborg.
Well, I would say that it would have the appendage would have to either be controlled through bioelectric like interaction or
So
vice versa,
they
so
do
and
though,
the
just to
body
restart
being
the battery.
controlled by mechanical.
It's a battery that's in there that they have to restart and replace sometimes.
So yeah, in that case, your body, your heart is being controlled by the device. So that
But
would
the
be.
heart,
They
it
could
only
shut it
turns
off
on
too if they
when
wanted to.
it needs it. It's not always running. It's only on when it measures that there's a disturbance with the energy in the heart. Once it measures that, then it kicks in, but it's not automatically turned on.
But it's a device that's not part of your body naturally.
Yeah, but I mean, a cyborg. If you said it earlier, you had to be 50% or more. I don't
No,
think
that was me.
installing a few items here and there are going to be, making you a cyborg.
Why can't you accept cyborg people? Come on,
No,
I think
accept
Lucy, that
cyborgs, man. We
yeah,
have
Okay.
that was me that said that because I was just kind of like making it, and that's my own personal opinion. Like,
yeah. I mean, but there's
like,
opinion, but then there's fact. Okay.
well, no,
Yeah,
definitely.
I think
That's
we're.
because the word cyborg just makes you it makes it sound like it's
No, it doesn't sound cool. It's just something that people been saying for a while. It's
And
nothing to be
listen,
cool
Meta,
about.
always remember, right? Definitions are words made by humans, and
Yeah,
words made by humans.
cyborgs. Okay.
We all,
I
but
think.
yeah,
I think. Death. I think we're about at the time, but I've got a
unless
little.
unless you have to go, we could go for like another 10, 15 more minutes.
Sorry, guys. I didn't
I
mean.
can do another 10 minutes. That's fine. But I got a little joke for you.
Yes.
So, what do you call a blonde that has dyed her hair brown? Artificial intelligence.
Wah, wah, wah. But
Nice.
why is
Yeah,
that?
stupid joke, but whatever.
I was thinking Oreo.
Oh, Lucy, that was good. But
I,
yeah,
I try to stay on point.
this is why I don't like because Meta when people hear cybernetics or like a cybernetic being, the first thing they think is like, oh my god, a robot person, and it's funny because like by that definition, there are already thousands of, if not tens of thousands of cyborgs.
When I hear cybernetics, I think I go back to Norbert Wiener in the 40s and all that stuff that predates complexity thinking and all this. I mean, cybernetics is, this is an entire branch of science.
Yeah, and it's
I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed about the what is called spawning of the robots, because I think in the first place it will be used more like for fucking reasons that to serve us in anyhow.
Oh, well,
when I sell, they
people
get
are gonna
spawn. That's what's gonna happen.
well, people are going to be upset for different reasons. For the most part, the most reason people are going to be upset is the fact that the labor jobs are going to be lost, and so people will be displaced for a short period.
I think that watch more professional jobs are going to be replaced.
Oh yeah.
More lawyers, more accountants.
The thing is, though, and I think this is like an America construct. You have to be willing to put the time in to change and to learn these things, and so I think we're going to have a ton of competition in the international stage because of our the prosperity our country has unfortunately faced for so many years already. Now we have this couple generations that really don't have that that oomph in them to go down that pathway yet. I don't think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it'll probably slowly roll out, and as people age, the new generation will be more comfortable with the new AI. and the older generation will just end up dying out.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you give it places like the UAE and Africa and Asia, right? And they're booming with the technology right now, and they're really pushing it forward. And it's because they have the pain of, not having this prosperous life, and they wanna make a better ecosystem for themselves.
That technology gap that I heard someone was talking about it. It's easier to go into a third world country and high tech it because they don't have to worry with as much as they have to worry about the people that live here.
Yeah, and
Yeah, the concept is called leapfrogging.
You're
And
leapfrogging.
yeah, the problem is that when you're in, say, like a first world country, you already have this infrastructure, right? And you already have these companies that are running it, and they have shareholders, and they want to keep and make as much money for their shareholder. That's their job, right?
Of course.
To tear it down and start doing a new thing, it's this is not part of the Innovator's Dilemma book, but if you read that,
It all comes down to money.
well, and that's the thing. You go to like a third world country or somewhere like Mongolia when they put up the cell towers, right? They didn't have wires strung across poles all over the place,
Yeah.
right? So it was a real easy decision to say, hey, we're just going to like throw up these towers, and then we don't have to run wires all over the place. Versus in, like, say, the States or Europe or something, you already have all these wires and poles and whatnot. So
Yeah.
you want to keep using them because they're already there. Like, it's easy. It's there.
Well, yeah, but and the money that rolls in from that. Look at what's happening with crypto. We're going to be the last country to adopt it because our banking system is so archaic and they make so much money off of all these fees that the last thing the banking system wants to do is give up all that money that it generates in late fees, in, freaking long, sending money, wire transferring. Now it's going to be instant at a fraction of a cent. How are they going to make money unless
Yeah,
they manage to control it from, manipulate it now, keep the price low so that they can hurry up and jump in and get in cheaper. And
there's another term for this concept um, from what's his name? I think it's Glenn Hutchins. I think he's one of the board members of the New York Fed, but he wears a stupid mustache. But anyway, he calls it legacy pools of profitability, and it's the same idea as like the poles and the wires, right? Like these were things that were profitable before their legacy, right? But there's an incentive to keep them alive because they're already there, and versus like transitioning over to, say, the new, say, cell towers. So yeah, it's the protecting legacy pools of profitability, and that's absolutely going to happen here because with the global monetary system, because the correspondent banking system, and there's ways, I think, quite keenly that the XRP folks, or not XRP folks, the Ripple folks have sort of designed RippleNet and whatnot, where it simultaneously enables the legacy pools of profitability to continue, right? But save cost. And then also simultaneously enable them to make new revenue off of, like, say, ODL and LO line of credit, on-demand liquidity and line of credit. I think they've done a dude, I'm telling you, strategically, I'm extremely impressed I've been for years impressed with the Ripple team. I mean, I think these guys are the smartest guys in the room.
well, I mean, they're also going to continue to custody like let's say they move to CBDCs. Most people, they won't know that the infrastructure is built out. They'll still continue to see their money as, I guess, dollar signs, but it'll actually be a CBDC that the bank will custody, and then the
Yeah.
background will be run by Ripple, and well, maybe
Well,
not
no,
Ripple.
the central banks, they'll run their own hardware and network and everything. I don't think that the central banks are going to let a private company. I mean, certainly not around the world. Like, this is an American company. Like, you think like China's going to let an American company run their? No, that's not going to
Well,
happen.
the distributed ledger technology, from what I remember, was gifted to the world, so that and XRP is supposed to be the bridge because it's supposed to be neutral. That means that no one can run the DLT. Like the XRPL is not
That's
is not really technically run by them. It's everyone's.
You
That's why
got a
you hear
decentralized
them.
network.
They say that it's a gift. That it's a gift. They keep on using that language. It's a gift to the people.
Well, I think the terms that David Schwartz used said he said it was a public good.
Yes, a public good. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's I.
I'll tell you.
Okay, it's like a gift. It's a
I'll
public
tell
good.
you what was a straight up gift was when they flat out gave interledger protocol to the W3C. I mean, they just gave it away. I was looking at it and I was like, dude, almost back to like the same thinking when I first stumbled into XRP Ledger. I was like, they can't be giving this away for free, right? Like, this can't be open source. It's got to be BS. And then they did it again with Interledger Protocol, and they just gave it away to the W3C. I mean, huge uh, technology, like, and they just gave it away.
Well, maybe because they are trying to do the one world, one money system, where everything is run globally with one, system. I don't Is it really giving it away if they're trying to put everything around the world in, one?
It was
And I
it
agree
was
with you. See, I see where you're going with it.
it was another one of these strategic moves. So in some sense, it does make sense, but it was one of these level the playing field strategic moves. Like, right, like if you know you're the best guy on the field, then let's play on a level playing field.
Yeah.
It was, because you're going to win, right? So it was one of those kind of moves. There was a sense of that too.
Because I always look at it as they're really all in on it together. They all want to accomplish something that's going to be run streamlined globally. No more, waiting around for weeks. You can just transfer something to Shangri-La, to Malaysia. You could transfer to China. You could transfer to Japan. You don't have to wait around. They want to transfer information the way that you receive an email. And they can't really achieve that if it's only in one country or only in two countries. They have to kind of unify all the banking systems. And really, it's like a big fat mafia, you know?
Well, this is a good lead up. I don't want to say the mafia part, but this is a good lead up to finish it off. And this is like, how do we get to the future of the Internet of Value, right? And it's so the biggest and the most important thing that needs to happen is an international agreement between, we could say, the central banks to the multiple parties, the governments. There needs to be some sort of cooperation between everyone. And that is the only true way that we would get to the Internet of Value, because the tokenization of everything, the representation of value being passed through ledger to ledger, with median currents, with median digital assets in the and between, right, does not happen without a regulatory regime agreement between the world.
Yeah. Dr. Pippa discussed that. She said that there was going to have to be some type of Bill of Rights written up for that.
Yep, there has to be some sort of agreement. Yeah, the rules of the road, right? The most important thing is taxes, right? You can't go from a one world country, take all your funds, and just think you're going to just get screwed away from taxes. There needs to be some sort of international tax agreement. It needs to be some sort of financial agreement between the way that the currencies are going to work between the countries.
Yeah. And you see multiple countries talking about this 15% minimum tax or something like that.
Yep, it was 15.6% minimum tax. Yep.
I mean, I think that makes sense. Like,
sure. Hey,
15% is pretty low, to be honest.
Better than paying 40% if you made a lot of money in the United States.
I agree.
Dude, back when back in the 70s, the highest tax rates were around like 80%. I mean,
yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take 15 over 80.
Yeah, I'll take 15.
The thing is, I'm also not, well, that's a graduated schedule, so you got to be careful how you say that. It's not like 80% of everything you made. It's 80% of those few dollars that were over the 10 millionth dollar, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a graduated schedule. But anyway.
Well, the IRS just hired a ton of, is hiring new agents.
87,000 new agents will be hired by the IRS. Let's not end the conversation on a bad note, though.
Well, the IRS is going to be larger than the Pentagon, the State Department, the FBI, and the Border Patrol put together. This is crazy.
I was at a conference with the lady that this was a few years back. She ran the IRS, like she was the top dog, and she was given a speech. She was on the, anyway, on the stage, and one of the things she said, which makes sense, is that the IRS is, so you like think of all the business entities in the world. The IRS is the biggest business entity in the entire world. There's no entity that has more cash inflow, outflow. They're the top dog, the number one. That's it.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean,
their money.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Like you got your the revenue basis of the tax code is economic basis. So they're presiding over one of the largest economies in the world. Or basically the largest economy. Well, might be getting close to arguing that point. But yeah, I mean, of course, like that makes sense. Like even a multinational corporation is not that big.
Yeah. They'll probably end up putting, AI if they don't have it already.
Oh, for sure. I'm sure they already have it. It's so this is why I was saying earlier when we were talking about combining AI and blockchain, like the blockchain data, it's just basic text data. This is low hanging fruit for AI technology to analyze.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely coming into a whole new world.
Yep, and we went past our. Typically, we do them from 5 to 6. We went past the time a little bit because I'm loving this conversation. I hope everybody else is. If I could ask everybody else, everybody in the space, sorry, if you could follow us at ledgerscale on Twitter. If you could retweet the space so that not only yourself but hopefully other people can find this information valuable in the future. As well as the little bubble at the bottom right. If you could click on that and then just give us a little heart. Twitter seems to like that for the algorithm. But Endless and Divers, you came up, man, right at the end. If you had something you'd like to say, please feel free, and I think we'll end it afterwards. Endless, you there? All right, he might have accidentally hit that to come up. That's fine. Well,
thanks so much, Karma and Death Avenger. Anyways, thanks so much for the spaces. It's always a pleasure.
No, we appreciate you guys joining and the questions and participation. I mean, that's part of the main point. If you do want to donate, there's the various networks addresses on the thing, and we'll be back tomorrow. Yeah.
We'll be back tomorrow, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. Everybody, open topic, so everybody feel free to come up, have any questions about anything you're wondering in the space. And thank you to everybody who comes up and participates. Lucy, it was nice seeing you in the space.
Thank you, Beth, for being here.
Oh yeah, and this is not financial advice.
Yes.
Oh, come on.
And nothing speakers or any of
Come
the
on. I really want financial advice here.
Also,
No,
nothing
no.
speakers.
We're just getting ideas around. That's all.